I'm Tim Trabold. Today I'm going to be making some Irish Red Ale. I'm going to try and film the steps that it takes for me to put the recipe together, and I am going to do my best to show you the process of brewing an Irish Red Ale. This is going to be my first YouTube video, so I hope it goes well, and let's enjoy some brewing today. I'm going to show you my basic setup. Up here is my hot liquor tank. It's just a 5-gallon cooler, and you'll see in there it's empty except for the fitting I've got on the outside. Now it's going to drain over here to my mash tun, which is another cooler, and it's about a 55 quart, so about a 14 gallon cooler. Inside this cooler I've got this copper screen. You'll notice I just soldered some stuff together to do some holes in the bottom. And the screen is going to fit into this little connector here. And when I drain the wort and sparge it, it's going to come out here, and then I'll just recycle it and then of course drain it into the boiling kettle. For a boiling kettle, I've got a kegel. It's about a 13-gallon keg. Obviously you cut the top off, got a dip tube in there, and a little screen made out of a old pie plate, or excuse me, cake pan. And as with the other stuff, it comes out the bottom. Just simple brass fittings. I've got a pretty low cost setup here. Didn't want to spend a lot of money on stainless steel just yet. I haven't been brewing this long enough to really get going. Notice on the side I did make myself a sight glass. Again, copper tubing, fitting coming out of the bottom, and this is the cool thing is I just got plastic tubing on a fitting down there, and when that gets a little cloudy I can replace the plastic tubing. Measured everything in, took a magic marker, wrote it up the side of the keg, and have a pretty good idea of what I'm boiling off. And over here is just a pretty standard burner. Turkey fryer burner, propane tank. In the back there's my cooling coil for later. Anyway, I'm about ready to get started here, and I'll move on. Alright, here is the recipe I'm going to be making today. As I said before, it is an Irish Red Ale. It's going to be an 8.3 gallon batch total. What I'm planning on doing is kegging somewhere between 4 and 5 gallons and then bottling the rest for sharing. It consists of about 14 pounds of pale malt, 2-row, about 1.5 pounds roasted barley, 14 ounces of flake barley, 9.7 ounces crystal malt 40, some fugels for bittering that'll be put in right at the beginning, and then of course Irish moss, and then we'll put some pearl in at the end for flavoring. For hops, the yeast I'm going to be using is a the Fermentation S33 Safe Brew Ale, and we should start out with about a 1.052 gravity, and after it's done fermenting out in a couple weeks I should be down to 1.016 gravity. The first thing I'm going to have to do to get the recipe going, after I rinse and clean off all my equipment, is going to be boiling about 21.25 quarts of water. Actually not boiling, we're going to get that up to about 168 degrees so we can mash that in, and it'll get our mash temperature about 156 degrees. At about 45 minutes, maybe a little longer, we'll start mashing out, and I'll use a little over 8.5 quarts of water to mash out. We should end up with somewhere around 9 gallons boiling, and then after about 60 minutes that should get down to about 8.3 gallons. My efficiency on my kettle, I lose about 0.5 gallon an hour during boiling. So here we go. Okay, well, I'm waiting for my water to fill up, and that's almost done. I'm now going to make a yeast starter. Like I said before, I'm going to be using the Fermentation Safe Brew S33 for yeast on this, and it's going to be a dry yeast. And I've made a wort starter. I used a half a cup of DME and 2 cups of water. Boiled it on the stove for about 10 minutes, and it's sitting here. It's been cooling now for about an hour in a bucket of ice. The ice is all gone, so I'm sure this is a good place right now to where I should be able to pour it into what's going to be my bucket. And if you'll notice, I don't have a large enough Erlenmeyer flask for this, so I'm just using a pickle jar, which in the bottom of it has this little stir pellet. Pour my DME in here, and that's good there. Let's get this out of the way. Okay. Over here I've got a homemade stir plate. Now, what this consists of is an old computer fan with some PVC glued to the top of it, and a magnet that I stole out of an old hard drive that had crashed. It's got a little potentiometer on here that'll adjust the speed of it. I put the lid on the shoebox here, set this on top of it, and it'll go to town. So, next thing I'm going to do is take and open up my yeast, and I'm just going to sprinkle it on top of this wort. Now, I could just sprinkle this directly on the beer. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing it that way. I'm doing it this way as opposed to just hydrating it 10 minutes before I bottle it, or I put it in the fermenters, because I'm going to try and get 8 gallons of beer fermented with 1 package of yeast. So I want to get the yeast going pretty good. If I was smart, I probably would have done this last night and given it a full day for the yeast to go, but as it turns out now, I'll probably pitch this in about 6 or 8 hours, and with any luck I shouldn't have any problem. What I'm going to do is find the pellet and try and line it up. Okay, the pellet stuck to the magnet in the thing. I'm going to turn the fan on and see if we can get this going. Nope, the fan's not working. Maybe I didn't plug it in. Okay, now if you look, I'm going to zoom in on it. The fan's going, thing's going. You look at the jar there, and it's already starting to spin a little bit. I'm going to run that at a pretty low speed. All I need to do is oxygenate the yeast, and if you turn that way down. Okay, I'm going to line it up a little better. I'm just going to let that go all day. Eventually, the wort I made from the DME, dried malt extract and water, is going to start that yeast fermenting and start the yeast to do the process of fermenting, and we'll have a great starter. When I ferment this beer, I'm going to have to split it into 2 carboys because I don't have an 8-gallon carboy. So what I'll do is put 4 gallons in each one, and since I know there's 2 cups to starter here, plus a little extra because of the dried malt, I'm going to put a cup in each one, and I'm sure it'll work just fine. Alright, one thing that I didn't mention, kind of forgot to mention, is that when you put your stuff on the stir plate, if you've got an Erlenmeyer flask like the thing on the left over there, you can put some aluminum foil over the top of it. In my jar here, I just put the lid on very loosely. This isn't like when you're fermenting where you want to keep air out. You actually want the oxygen in there so that it has something to start the conversion process. So just another little tidbit. Alright, I've got 5 1/4 gallons of water. I am ready to put it into my boiling keg here. unlike some of the nicer setups that some of the other guys have with pumps and hoses going everywhere, I have to do this manually. So what I'm going to have to do, take my 5-gallon bucket here, step on top of my step ladder, and pour this in. Alright. Now, once that's poured in, I just need to start my burner going. Put in the propane a bit. And get it going. Take a quick close look here. Barely see the flame under there. But put a look on top. Now you'll notice one thing I didn't mention before is I do have a electronic thermometer set up here, and you see I've got a hang off the side of the kettle. Got my drain pipe going down there for when I end up draining water out of it a little bit. And there's the water in the kettle. Obviously not boiling yet, but it will be soon. So the next step is going to be mashing in once I get this up to the right temperature. And based on my instruction from Brewsmith and what I found out over time, I need 160 degrees. Okay, you see my timer there is set 160. I actually re-looked at my recipe, and it says that I need to get that up to 168.2 degrees. So I'm going to bump my temperature setting here to 166. That way it'll give me a little bit of time. And now we're just going to have to wait. Okay, temperature's up to a little over 168 right now. And now it's going to be time. I've turned off the burner, and we're going to do a little bit of water transfer into the mash tun. Now what I've done is I've moved everything kind of close together. Back out a little bit here, and you'll notice my output port there is right under here. Let me just spin this out a little. Slide this under. And start transferring water. See that going in there. That should take a minute or two. Once that's done, then we'll start mashing it. Okay, we've got all the water transferred from the kegel into the mash tun cooler. It's time to mash in the grain. As mentioned, I got somewhere in the neighborhood of around 16-17 pounds of grain here. Mixtures of two-row, barley, and crystal 40. And mashing in is not all that difficult to do. Basically, you just stir in the grain and make sure it doesn't clump up, and you're good to go. Basically, stir it in. See if I can turn the camera down a little bit onto here so we can see what's going on. That's a little bit. Okay. Again, just going to stir in. Scoop or so at a time. I wish I had a little bit bigger scoop, but that's alright. You don't want to get clumps. Stirring and scooping. Stirring and scooping. Now, the point of mashing is to get all the sugars out of the grain. And the point of you doing it at specific temperatures is so that you don't get things you don't want out of it. If you get it too hot, you might get some enzymes that can make it not taste as good as if you get it at the right temperature. If you get it too cold, you're not going to get all your sugars out. There is a little bit of room for error though, so you want that enzyme conversion to happen so that all those sugars start coming out of that grain. Now, once I put this in here, it's going to sit and steep. And every once in a while I'll come in and stir it around just to keep the temperature somewhat the same throughout the grain bed. And we don't want any clumps. We want that grain in there. Now this is going to be a little bit of a darker wort than some of you might be used to if you do pale ales. Obviously they're a lot lighter. Since this is an Irish red, it's closer to a stout as far as coloring. Now at the end of this mash, or about 45 minutes into it, I'm going to add some more hot water and try and really get that last little bit of conversion going. And we will rinse it, or sparge it. We'll do a fly sparge, which means once we get the grain bed set, we're just going to run clear water through it and rinse it out on the fly. Okay, that's pretty good. Oops. Let's, just for the heck of it, grab my thermometer. And I'll stick it in here and see if it gives us a reading. Looking for a reading in the high 140s. Going up to the 150s. Right now it's sitting at 148. That's pretty good. I may try and raise that up a temperature or two, degree or two. We'll keep an eye on it and see. Shut the lid, let it sit. Now, while that's sitting there mashing, I've got some more work to do. We need to boil some more water, or excuse me, heat some more water for the temperature conversion. And you see 151, that's just about right where we want it, so we're not going to do anything with that. Just going to let it go. Since it's in the cooler, that temperature should not vary by much more than 1 or 2 degrees in the next hour or so, and we're good to go. Okay, now it's time to mash out. And what that is adding warmer water to the mash, and it's going to raise the temperature up. And once it raises that temperature up, it's going to get a little bit more of the conversion going. Verify everything's out, and we're going to let it sit for about 10-15 minutes after we do this. And at that point, then we'll be ready to sparge it. Right now our temperature is at 150 degrees, 2 degrees in there. While it was mashing, I did add some water to it and reheated some of the mash to get the temperature up some. It wasn't quite where I wanted it. Just added 2 gallons of water here, and that should kick the temperature up to somewhere around 168 degrees. And when it hits that, then it'll be time to do the sparging of the mash. Put this other thermometer in here. I think it works a little better. And close this. Let that sit for a little while. And we'll be good to go. Now while that's doing that, I need to boil some water for the actual sparging process. And I added half a gallon of water when I was trying to raise the temperature a little bit. My recipe says I need to fly sparge with 4.5 gallons of water at 168 degrees. So I'm going to cut that back to about 4 gallons of water and maybe rinse it a couple extra times. Okay, the mash is all done. It's been mashing out for the past 10-15 minutes or so. Temperature's down to where it should be. Did have a little issue there getting it to the right temp, but we're good. And now it's time for us to start sparging. And what that does is it rinses the grain, and the grain, what comes out of the grain is going to end up being our wort. Right now though, we're going to do a little bit of grain bed setting. Now if you look down here in the bottom where the spout is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start taking a little bit of this out. I'm going to come real slow. You'll notice when it first comes out, and you can't really see it in the camera, but when it first comes out, some of the grain particles are going to come with it. And they're going to be pretty thick colored. Let's see if I can zoom in on that a little bit. It's fairly thick colored. Now, when I done that, I'm going to pour that over the top of it. I'm not going to show it to you just now, but carefully pour it over the top. What we're trying to do is we're trying to set the grain bed such that when we do actually drain the wort off for real and get ready to boil it, we want a really clean wort, very few particles from the grains coming through to it, and we want everything we can out of there. But the first thing we're going to do is just do what I'm doing right now. I'm setting the bed. Just drain off a little bit here at the bottom. What this is going to do is force the grain at the bottom of the pan to lay down. Okay, set it down there. Put it on the top very carefully. Really want to stir up the grain if I can't help it. Right now a lot of that grain has already gone down to the bottom of the mash tun. And if you remember, I've got my filter pipes at the bottom. Now we're getting to the point now where the filter pipes are fairly emptied out. All the little particles that are on the bottom that would go through those little holes and out the spout here are pretty much on top now, and it's going to use the grain bed to filter itself. Again, I'm going to do this 3 or 4 more times. This is one of those areas where you got to be kind of patient. No reason to hurry here. You don't want to open the valve wide open because that's just going to suck the grain bed down, and it's going to give you a stuck grain bed because it'll take everything out too fast and it'll just layer down really tight. You want to go really slow. Pour it in the top.
Why are you trying to get out of patience? I told you. Because of my love and devotion to you above all.
One thing I'm going to do when we're starting to do the actual sparging, now if you look, you can't really see, but that wort's fairly thin and clear.
I'm still scarred over the A- biochemistry incident in 1996. I can't imagine just crushing the spirit of young budding minds like that. Your budding mind was hardly crushed. And
Now I'm going to do this for, I don't know,
the budding minds of today will have patience.
rinse it from the top to the bottom
Great hearts.
for about 10 minutes maybe. And then I'm going to stop draining it into buckets, or start draining it into buckets.
Hello?
Now, since I don't have any pumps,
Yes.
and I got to lift it up to get it up to my boiling kettle,
How can I help you?
what I will do is, I know, drain off a couple gallons,
Thank you, Governor.
stop, pour it into the boiling kettle,
If you want to
drain off a couple more gallons,
say no.
4 or 5 gallons, enough that I can lift it up high enough without too much effort.
Chelsea Rossberger passed away last night, cancer.
One of the things I learned, you definitely don't want to have to lift up 8 gallons worth of wort at once and try pouring it into your boiling kettle at 6 feet high.
That would be great. Thanks.
Again, just take your
You
time.
do understand this is a favor. Yes, I was right here when he asked you to do it. That means no Downton Abbey jokes. Turn the home.
That's
You
that.
promise? I...
Okay, I've begun to sparge. You can see I got a little bit of water coming in and a little bit of wort going out. I'm going to fill that bucket about halfway and then stop for a minute, and then I'm going to pour that into the boiling kettle and start it heating while the rest of it's sparging out. See, I just barely turn the knob there, and I barely turn the knob there, so everything is a pretty much continuous process. It's going to take a while, but that's okay. It'll be good when it's done. While the wort's draining, I'm going to go ahead and weigh my hops out. Just get that over with. I'm going to have to weigh them out anyway. I'm going to be using 2 kinds of hops, Pearl and Fugel. Again, I mentioned this before, but the Fugel's going to be used at the beginning of the boil, and the Pearl at the end of the boil. It should give me a pretty decent flavor. My recipe calls for about 2.3 ounces of the Fugels and 1.73 ounces of the Pearl. We'll go ahead and make that 1 3/4. And I use an electric scale here, electronic scale. Okay, start out with some Fugel. I got some left over from a previous batch. And actually what I got here is US Fugel, and my other kind is UK Fugel. You can see that. The alphas are about the same, pretty darn close. Betas are close. So I don't think it's make a lot of difference. Within a percent of each other. But the Fugels, like I said, I need 2.3 ounces. So here's 0.5. My scissors are there. This should be 1, so I should get up to 1.5 if these are weighed right. And which it is. Let me go ahead and I'm going to zoom in on the scale here. Make sure it's useful. I think you can see that. Okay. Okay. And the 2.3 is what I need. And I actually like my beer a little hot here. I may go a little bit. I may go to 2.4. See right in the money. So what I'm going to do, and here's a little trick I've used a few times. I got some 1 gallon paint strainer bags. Bought these at Lowe's, like $1.80 for 2 of them. They work great for hot bags. If you're doing brew in a bag or you're doing a smaller batch like with the turkey fryer, you can actually do a brew in a bag with the 5-gallon paint strainer bags too, and they fit pretty well in a 27-quart turkey fryer bin or pan pot. Anyway, just a little thing picked up. Okay, I got the hops all weighed out. Got 2 packs. Pearl, Fugel. Just going to tie them shut. The mash tun is down to the grain bin. Let's swing over there and take a quick look at it. Put the grain bed and add enough water. It's maybe coming out a little faster than it's going in. I think it's about to the point now. I'm going to switch buckets so I'm able to lift it up easily. So here we go. Put that off. That. Bring in a bit. Up. Put it in the other bucket. Switch it back on. And there we go. And just take a look at that. Going in pretty good. Close to the boil, and that means we're about an hour and a half from finished. That's just a little bit of a timeline. I'm thinking I started this at somewhere around 11:30 this morning, and it's now around 2:33 in the afternoon, maybe even a little later actually. It's about 2:45 in the afternoon, so I've been at this somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 hours. Pretty typical. Brew day goes typically 5 or 6 hours if you're lucky. I've had a hard time getting them done in under 6 hours. By the time you clean everything, get everything together, do the brewing, clean everything back up and put it away, and you're talking 7-8 hours total. But the product's going to be worth it. Okay, looks like the last of the mash is drained here, and pour this over in the bag. Already got the keg lit, it's starting to boil, starting to heat. Pour the rest of this in. Supposed to get somewhere around 9.5 gallons of wort to boil. And let's see what we got here. Based on that, I got a little bit over 10 gallons. So we're going to be doing a little boiling to boil it down. I'll get the boil started, knowing that I lose about a little over 1/2 gallon an hour. I'm going to go ahead and boil it for a little while before I add the hops. Maybe get it somewhere in the neighborhood of a little under 10 gallons before I start my final boil process, and we'll go from there. One thing I'm going to do now before I start any boiling is I'm going to check the specific gravity of the initial wort. I got my refractometer here. I'm just going to reach in here. Oh, I guess I gotta get a eyedropper thing. I'm gonna take a drip off of my mixing thing, but it didn't have it. Let's see. Put a couple drops on the screen and do that. Keep that handy, I'll probably use it later. Now what you do with one of these, you look inside it, it gives you a scale. Okay, right now it says my gravity is about a 1.049. Now once I boil that down a little bit, that's going to go up. My recipe says I should start at the end of the boil and have a gravity of about 1.052. So it doesn't look like I have very far down to go. I might end up going a little bit higher just because of the boil volume. But then again, I might end up having, if my gravity ends up being 1.052 and I got 10 gallons of wort, it means I got some pretty good efficiencies with my mashing. Okay, we're just about ready for the boil here. Almost to the point of the hot break. What that is when it's just about ready to boil, or when it just starts to boil, foam starts developing on the top of the wort. When that foam starts developing, it will easily overflow the kettle. So you got to be very careful, and it's a good idea to get your paddle or your spoon or whatever you use to stir things and kind of stir that foam to the middle and keep it from building up, because if you don't do that and you're not watching real close, it will boil over, and it'll do it in no time. I mean, it does not take any time at all for that to go from surface up to boiling foam, and you do not want to boil over. It stinks, it gets on your flame, and it's a waste of beer. Okay, we're to the point. It's starting to boil. It's going to start going pretty good here in a little bit. You can see the foam building up around the edges. Now you got to be real careful and watch your flame. And watch this foam, because as soon as it starts really churning here, that foam's going to build up fast. If you don't knock it down, it's history. And it's only lasts for a minute or so. It's called the hot break. Once it gets going, then we can turn the heat down a little and let the boil get going. Might have to turn the heat down anyway if it gets too much too fast.
Right now, Pep Boys, when you buy 3 tires, you get the 4th tire free. Instantly. Plus, get up to $70 off select Cooper tires. Trust the boys to get you there.
Alan was trying to make a bullet out of thinking faster.
Yeah.
Something that would break apart once it is.
There we go. Almost there.
Won't pass through a body and turn it into potassium or damage structure light.
Is that Susie's diorama? It's very realistic. And the scale and the detail. Well, I just think that detailed work deserves appreciation. Okay. The plaster bullet that did this was too hard. Went all the way through and it didn't break apart. So he mixed and remixed the plaster.
Yeah, that was one of the water compost.
Yeah, you also got to watch out for foaming when you start adding the hops. And
I'd like to remind everyone again that Judith Barnett was standing.
looks like
I'm not so sure.
we're through it.
There's something about the nature of the night.
Got a good boil going on.
Frankie, can you pull up the extras?
And as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to let this boil for a little while before I add any hops. Still plenty of time for the hops to impart their flavor, but we'll go from here. Okay, it's been boiling for a little while, got the volume down a bit. I'm going to throw in my first batch of hops. These are the Fugels, and you'll watch when I do it. The foam is probably going to turn a little green. I'm going to turn the power down just a little bit here, get our flame down. This is going to foam up a little bit. And boom. What's funny is those hop pellets just expand unbelievably. I mean, I'll just fill up that bag. If I could bring it up here. I can't fish it out, but the bag just, go look there, I don't know if you can see it. It's just puffed up. And There you go. So that's going to boil in there for the whole boil now. From here till we're done. The next addition is with 10 minutes left, we'll throw in a little bit of Irish moss, which will help clarification while we're bottling and kegging. And then right at the finish of the boil, we'll throw in the pearl hops.
Which is really good, by the way.
Okay, it's been boiling for about 50 minutes. Getting ready to add the Irish moss. I was going to put it in a bag, but, you know, I'm just going to put it right in there. It will settle out within the fermenters. And I think this might distribute it a little better. Again, that will help with the clarification at the end of the bottling process. The flocculation of the yeast. So that's that. And next step in about 10 minutes.
How did you figure it out?
One thing I almost forgot to add was my wort chiller. This is my homemade wort chiller. It's got about 25 feet of coil on it. What I'm going to do is put this in the boil so it'll get sanitized. And when we're done boiling, we'll be using that to cool the wort down as quick as possible.
Or I could just talk about doodles.
I just drop that in there. I'm actually going to hang the hose up here out of the way so that it doesn't get heated up by the fire. Anyway, that's in there.
And it's Santiago.
And
Brilliant.
it's hanging down in the boil again. You see it's boiling away still.
You sure you're not hurting yourself? Well, the body is meant to be flexible, baby. I don't think it's going to be that flexible.
I'm going to do a quick check of the specific gravity and see where we stand on that. I'm going to get my refractometer out.
It'll be okay.
Reach in there with a little eyedropper
I'm good.
and get a couple drops on it.
I quit my job, and I'll have a complete fresh start. Your job?
And
Everything's got to change.
flip the little thing down.
It's like I gotta tear down
Flip
the
that little
house,
thing down on
right
there.
down to the foundation, so I can start.
And I'm going to take a gravity reading. Last time I checked it, it was about 1.55. Right now it's 1.053. That's pretty much exactly where it's supposed to be at the end of the boil. So that's really good news.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm just gonna be able to help you.
Okay. I'm going to add my last hop addition. The boil time is over. My gravity's right where it needs to be. And I've got the right volume in the kettle. I'm going to put the last batch in, and I'm going to shut the boil off. That'll steep in there while the wort is chilling, and once it's done chilling, we'll be ready to put it in the fermenters. Alright, the brew process is all done, and I've added my wort chiller, and you can see it's hooked up to the hose down there, and water comes in to this fitting here and goes through the pipes into the beer and then out the other side, and you can feel the temperature difference. I mean, there's definite temperature difference from the incoming water and the outgoing water. I'm going to stir it around a little bit just to keep the surface air flowing, and I'm going to let this wort chill for, I don't know, probably 20-25 minutes, maybe a half hour. It'll get it down to an acceptable temperature to where I can put it into my buckets and my carboys for fermenting. And we're just about done. So, home stretch here. One thing I found is that if you take the outgoing hose and kind of rub it around the outside of here to cool the outside, that gets things to coming down a little bit too. A little labor intensive. I can stick it up in the bottom down here and let it go on the bottom, and eventually that will cool down and we'll be good to go. My thermostat is not really giving me a good pressure right now, or good temperature reading right now. So we'll see about that. Maybe I'll have to get another thermostat. These things don't last very long. They aren't really supposed to be waterproof. I do try to take some epoxy, and on the end of them I try and seal them with epoxy and see if they'll last a little longer, but they're really only good for a couple brew cycles. I really need to just put a regular temperature gauge on the outside of my brew kettle. In a little while, we'll be bottling or into the carboys. Alright, it's been chilling now for probably a half hour or so. It's at a pretty decent temperature. I got a couple carboys here ready to go, all sanitized and ready to put the wort in. Now comes the time when I'm going to do just that. First, I'm going to get a little table, put it over here. I'm going to turn the water off. Water is done. Now I'm going to go through the process of packing it to the fermenter. First thing I'm going to do, put my fermenter under here and pull the cap off it. Got a sanitized hose here ready to go. I'm actually going to slide it out a little bit. And start draining. Now when it first comes out, there's going to be some crud at the bottom. That will eventually settle out of the fermenter. I'm not going to go really fast, just because I don't really need to. I actually would like to have a little more air in this, so I'm going to stop for a minute and I'm going to get a shorter hose that will allow it to splash a little bit because I want to oxygenate it. Okay, I've got a little better hose here. It's only about a foot long, or not even a foot long, closer to 6 inches. Been washed, sanitized. I'm going to pull this hose off here. Okay, this one will be bitter. The thing about when you're bottling into the fermenter, or transferring into the fermenter, you want to make sure that you get some oxygen in there, because oxygen will help the yeast get started. Now, I've got a little over 8.5 gallons of wort. So I'm going to fill this up right about here, and then I'll put my other carboy down there and fill it up to a similar spot, and we'll even them out a little bit. And I'm not worried about oxygen getting in here. Oxygen's good. More is better at this point. Really open it up. I can really fill it fast, but I said I don't really want to open it up too much on this one. I've had these both of these carboys clean, sanitized, ready to go. Just sitting there waiting. I'm actually looking at the sight glass on my kettle, and I'm going to stop this at just when it gets down to about 4.25 gallons, and hopefully that'll be pretty close. Now what I think I will do with this is let it sit for a little while. Like I said, it's plenty cool. Maybe let it settle a bit. Not really necessary to let it settle, but I've still got my yeast sitting in there on the churn plate, and it's been on the stir plate for going on 6 hours now. It seems to be pretty well activated. And we'll take a picture of that in a little bit. Right now, estimated time going on really close to 6.5 hours here, and we're at the end of the project. Cleanup wise, I've gotten everything else pretty much cleaned up. The only thing left to clean up now is the kegel and to put away my propane tank. Take stock as to how much is left of my propane tank. I'm guessing I used about a quarter tank of propane today. One thing you will learn as you brew beer is you're not brewing it to save a lot of money, because there's always something else you could get. There's always more equipment. There's always better ways or easier ways to do things. And that's part of the fun of the hobby. The biggest plus is you get to taste and drink really great beer. And it is better than the beer you buy in general. Craft beers are good, don't get me wrong. They're great, and they're going to taste as good or better than what you brew. But when you brew it yourself, you can say, I did that. That's my beer. Okay, this one's done. Same thing with this one. It's going. Take this, stick my sanitized lid on it. In fact, I'm going to soak this in some sanitizer really fast. It's already plenty sanitized, but I'm going to add a little bit. Pop it down on here for now. We're going to have to open that up in a little bit to add the yeast to it. Come back over to the other side here. And let's just go. Like I said, I want it to oxygenate, so I don't want it to come out too fast. I definitely want it coming out fast enough to fill the bottle. I don't want to sit here all night, but I also want to be able to get it to siphon that last little bit out of the keg. Well, and there you have it. 2 carboys filled with about 8 gallons of beer, ready to ferment. Ought to come out pretty good. And you notice they've been sitting a little while. On the bottom of this one, we've already got some sediment developing. So, and there's still a little bit developing over in that one too. Now once the fermentation process gets going, that stuff will just churn and bubble, and eventually it will settle down, and we'll leave that behind when we go to either secondary ferment it or bottle it. We'll see how it looks when it's time. I do like the secondary ferment myself, just because I like having a clean brew when I'm ready to bottle or keg it, but we'll see what happens. Okay, the carboys are in the fermenting spot. Just pitched the yeast in them, and look real close down there. Okay, let's get a little light in here. You can see got a couple blow-off tubes set up. So once the yeast starts churning and burning, you should be able to get down some good CO2 expansion. I expect we'll start seeing something by tomorrow, and within 36 hours or so, these things will be just a-boiling. Okay, it's been about 12 hours since I pitched the yeast, and it is just going like gangbusters here. Got a big layer of krausen up on the top. You can just see the bubbling going out of each of them. And if you look, you can really see the bubbling inside of both of them. When I tested the original gravity, it came out to be 1.06, which was quite a bit higher than what I was shooting for at 1.053. So I did go ahead and add some water to pull the gravity down to where I was shooting for, and we should end up at the right spot then with the right alcohol content for flavor, and it should be pretty good. It's now been 7 days since we brewed our beer and put it in the primary fermentation vessels. If you look, the krausen has pretty much dissipated in both of them. You can't really see through this one, but it's pretty much gone. Down at the bottom of the vessel, you can see the layer of trub. And it is still fermenting. I don't know if you can see it, but there are still bubbles going up. And a whole lot slower than before. Our airlock is still moving a little bit. This one over here, same thing. And every once in a while you see a bubble come up. I'm going to leave these in the primary fermenters for another day or two, and then I'll move them to secondary vessels. Some people do this, some people don't. I personally like to move them into secondary because it gets them off the trub and helps to get, I think it lets the beer clarify a little better when I bottle it, because I don't have as much sediment. Anyway, we'll be back.